Hello and welcome back to the Winning Agenda's coverage of Australian Nationals Top 8. My name is Jesse Marshall. I'm here with Wilfy Horrig.
You sure are, Jesse.
And once again, I'm here with Wilfy Horrig in the physical sense and in the visual sense because he is on the right-hand side playing Whizzard once again.
Yes, my favourite identity, with 3 sweet Winning Agenda counters being used to represent my recurring credits.
Beautiful counters. Thank you, Team Covenant, for those.
Yes, shout out. Big shout out.
And Chris here is on a very interesting hybrid CTM deck that brings in some of the elements of the Hot Tub Time Machine decks.
Yes, I noticed you said that as though you didn't think it was the best name in Netrunner history, which I'll just ignore since it obviously is. But yeah, so while shuffling his deck, I realized it was thicker than normal, and I asked, and he said 54 cards, so I realized that knew that he was playing Museum to start with. And so I
then he's tossed out 2 assets there?
Yeah, 1 asset and 1 upgrade, actually. So I don't know if you can see, but it's a Mumba Temple and a Mumbad Virtual Tour, both in the same server. And I have chosen to mulligan my opening hand. I assume it was pretty bad. Either it didn't have any hate cards like I wanted, or it was just generally miserable. But yeah, so it didn't exactly fill me with hope, I will admit, before I've even drawn my opening hand, for my opponent to have Mumbad City Hall in play, which is probably the best card that they can have in their opening hand. Like, it surely is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Particularly because now, well, with a Mumbad City Hall in play, you would have to go in, trash the City Hall, clear the tag on turn 1.
Yeah.
Which is very, very hard to do against CTM with the threat of hard-hitting use.
Yeah. So yeah, I have my freshly mulliganed 5 cards. We'll see what that entails.
Well, perhaps getting hard-hitting used on turn 1 or turn 2 is the best time to get hard-hitting used.
Well, the thing is that you still need them to spend credits to do it.
Yeah.
Like, you really... I mean, it is good because he didn't have hedge or sweeps. I mean, not that he would have had the time to play hedge or sweeps so far, but, like, you know, just the fact that if he wanted to hard-hitting use, I'd rather him have to pay some of his actual credits that he's spent resources to gain rather than... rather than just being able to play for 3 credits.
And we've got a targeted marketing here naming networking.
It is naming networking. Perfectly reasonable after I played networking in turn 1.
Yeah.
And then 2 assets. So I'm a little... I ran R&D with my first click since I assume he didn't have hard-hitting use since he didn't play it.
He's also low on credits.
Yes, both of those.
Well, I mean, we can't really tell because it sort of looks like he has 1, but I think he may have 3.
He has 4, right? Because he would have just...
well, who can tell?
Yeah, but I mean, regardless, he's low enough that I didn't think it was a huge deal to run, since I didn't think it was very likely. But
and you played a daily cast.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so things are going okay for me, except I'd really like that targeted marketing cleared as soon as possible, which is why I'm running R&D to try and snipe early. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's very... Like, I could run HQ, but I think R&D is a bit more likely right now, just because he hasn't played any of his ice. He hasn't played any ice, so I think that's... Like, he might have some agendas, but he might... HQ might be just ice, especially since he kept his opening hand, didn't mulligan. And agendas of... Especially for this version of the deck, agendas are much worse to have in your opening hand than the version the more traditional version, which is trying to get you with breaking news.
Okay.
So that was my thought process.
And now you've drawn a second hate piece, which is pretty good.
Yes.
Particularly, well, actually, no, it doesn't combo at all with networking in the current situation, because networking is basically just completely turned off. But ordinarily, it combos very well with networking, because you can deal with what's on the board with the Solstice Slums and deal with the hard-hitting use of the networking.
Yes. Which is...
They're the 2 main threats that the deck's presenting to you.
So what's going on here?
You run the Commercial Bankers group.
Oh, and
are we having a discussion about whether slums and CTM?
Yes, we have. That's right.
Yeah.
So Tom, we are playing, I guess, American rules, however you want to say.
Which are now the official FAQ rules.
Yes, but at the time of this of nationals, it was as of yet not perfectly clear how it worked.
No, not official. But it was as clear as any other card interaction that's not in the FAQ, but has been discussed by the designers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like Germany played by a different set of rules to the Americans. But yeah, so disregarding that, we've...
the bankers are gone.
The bankers are definitely
Basically,
gone. And so we're seeing an install and 2 activations of City Hall. which is not good for me. I'm really not happy about this situation.
Here's one activation
one-
for the consulting visit. Yeah, into hard
Hard
hitting
hitting
news.
news, yeah.
Okay,
So this is pretty bad for me.
it's pretty gross.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I honestly didn't even think of this. Like when
Yeah.
I will admit, I knew that it could happen, but I didn't. Like when my opponent rezzed the Mumbad City Hall, I didn't seriously think. Like not because I didn't see the Mumbad City Hall, so it's not like it would have changed anything
No.
realistically. But I didn't think that the fact that my opponent hadn't played Hard Hitting News meant they didn't have Hard Hitting News in hand, but it also could have meant that they had Mumbad City Hall but didn't have the opportunity to use it.
So this presents you with a really interesting decision. Do you give your opponent 40 credits?
Yes,
basically?
I'm seriously considering it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of dreading what's going on now as I take money of my daily costs and think
But then,
about.
as you sort of settle down after that initial thought, because I initially, when I looked at the board, then thought maybe that would not be the worst thing.
The problem is they still has the Mumbad City Hall. So then
Yeah.
what am I going to do next turn?
Yeah.
You know, he has all the credits, he has to do whatever. He has Mumbad City Hall in play and yeah.
You can go get museum and then put the
Yeah. Or
Figure
whatever,
back in next turn.
yeah,
Hard
so
hitting news,
I've
yeah.
decided that's not a good idea. I'm okay to just float tags for a turn as long as I get rid of the City Hall.
I think so.
So slums the
Yeah.
City Hall, do something, run something, so I'm going to try and snipe the marketing this turn. I've decided that I'm not going to clear any tags this turn because having 0 tags is the same as having 4 tags,
Mhm.
and I'm going to try and get to a point where I can,
Except that we saw a psychographics, didn't we?
oh, sure, but
So
not at the moment. I'm
Yeah.
not. He has so few credits, I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've exiled the Mumbad City Hall there, which
I've removed it from the
sorry,
game.
removed it from the game with
with
your
my
Salsa
Salsa
Slums,
Slums.
which is a pretty good place for it to be.
Yes, definitely.
And there's one bankers also in that zone.
Yes. But yeah, so now I actually saw mid-seasons when I ran HQ, so that's something that I will keep in mind for the rest of the game. But the thing is that
And is your opponent on 1 credit there, or?
no, I think 3 credits.
Okay.
Yeah, so I run R&D. So this turn I'm going to just ignore the marketing. I'm going to ignore the tags rather, and then I'm going to let my opponent draw. Then next turn get into a situation where I can hopefully clear the marketing, and then the turn after networking. So here I'm worried that that's Sensi or something. As a Jackson, and my opponent's just leaving it. I think. Oh, they're thinking about whether they want to use it or not.
So if you're Chris here and you're looking at this board, what's your out?
Well, he's actually in a good spot, I
Yep.
think. But he wants to draw, I think, a tag punishment card. But the thing is that I think that the best thing to do is to kind of minimize the effectiveness of the tag punishment cards, as I said last video. So I think he's just kind of looking to build his board a little bit.
Okay.
And I think that by me, kind of not worrying about clearing the tags and being a bit more aggressive, I've successfully sort of mitigated the effectiveness of that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he hasn't been able to use his Mumba Temple credits at all. He has no ice on any of his servers, and while he does have a targeted marketing, that's not necessarily going to stay there for a while.
And I think mid-seasons is actually not that good in this situation, because if you steal an agenda, the targeted marketing goes away, and then at that point, it's actually not that hard for you to recover from mid-seasons with
Yes,
networking.
although it still is significant. Like, it's not the, I think, worst, but yeah.
No, but I mean, it's no better than another hard-hitting use.
Yeah, so now my opponent trashed my 2 resources, which I think is the right thing to do. But the thing is that Sunset Slumps has already done fairly good work.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually super worried about what's going on here.
It let you control the board in some key turns, for
Yeah.
sure. So you aren't to know, but Chris does have a GFI and a Beal in hand.
Yes,
And I think he ran twice. Once sort of S5 portfolio, the other time saw the mid-seasons.
Yes. And like I kind of do suspect he has one agenda in hand because he put his ice on HQ, rather than on R&D, which I would assume if he didn't have any agendas, and also he didn't play any assets this turn, instead of killing the daily costs. And daily costs with 2 counters is not exactly with 4 credits is not exactly the highest value target. So
Yeah.
I
running
actu-
face down ice that when they have a Mumba Temple is also really bad, though, isn't it?
yeah,
And
I thought that wasn't maybe after thinking about it, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But the thing is that it's still not guaranteed that he could res the ice.
No.
So I thought that it was worth it.
I don't mean that you shouldn't have done that in
Oh.
that situation. I just mean in general, you're reticent to do it because you're just giving your opponent value.
Definitely. I was seriously thinking about not doing it, but also the fact that he played an ice on HQ, it all made me want to do it. But I don't know, it definitely could have gone either way. But yeah, so now I'm trying to clear out the Mumba Temple because I want to run R&D as much as possible to get rid of the targeted marketing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to clear the Mumba Temple while keeping below 5 credits so the virtual tour doesn't hurt me.
Yep. So Moonbed Virtual Tour, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, has to be trashed by the runner if able, but Wilfy was below 5 credits, which is the trash cost, so he wasn't able. Because all 3 Whizzard credits were spent on the Moomba Temple.
Yes. Cool. So I saw a Sensi and trashed it from R&D. I usually don't like using real credits to trash from R&D when I'm not running again, but I really didn't want to have to check my opponent's remote, just like in the case that everything's going to be a Sensi. Like, I think them firing a Sensi is pretty bad, and it turned out to be right because he immediately drew for his next action and drew a Sensi. So, so yeah, that didn't turn out so great for me, but I think it was still right to trash the thing. Oh, yeah, I was so excited about seeing the agenda, but then that is one of the drawbacks of the tag thing, is that your opponent could have QPM.
Yeah.
But I figured that deck probably didn't have that much room for QPMs, like, since you really want to minimize your agenda density, so that's what I figured it was okay to run anyway.
Yeah.
So here I ran again, my opponent flipped the resistor. I accessed resistor and my opponent flipped it up. And so we paused the game and we're asking Tom what to do, who is the very...
the Marshal.
Yes, the Marshal and also the Marsh...
Yeah. The Baron of the Bog.
Yeah.
So he was the Marshal at this event, and the decision, I think, was that the court player had flipped the top card of R&D, which gave them information.
Yeah, so basically they just looked at the top card of R&D, which meant that we need to make an unknown card the new top card of R&D.
Yeah.
Which means that basically I get to access a new card for free, because obviously it's a huge advantage to know that the top card, whatever the top card is, that's something that I couldn't trash rather than didn't want to trash.
Yeah.
So I think what Tom did was right.
And also, as a court player, knowing what you have coming up is also really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it can affect your res decisions, it can affect everything else.
Definitely he needs to fix that, but I just mean the access part, because obviously it doesn't make sense to not access, to run R&D, to access a card in R&D and have it not be the top card afterwards.
Okay.
Right? Like...
So as the runner, you should have the benefit of knowing the top card of R&D after running R&D.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to,
Yeah.
So I think what Tom did was right, and we're working out how to solve it now.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. I'm not sure if it's covered explicitly in the floor rules.
Tom said, like, I don't want to necessarily say what should or should not happen, but Tom ruled it as being looking at extra cards. It's just the same as flipping a card.
Well, I think it is.
Yeah,
I mean, as a tournament judge, you don't want to be allowing players to gain access to information they shouldn't.
Yeah,
then it certainly needs to be a penalty.
It's no different to shuffling and flipping a card, basically. Just because it happened, even though it happened at a weirder time, basically, in terms of the game state. So here's shuffling, and I'm going to see a new card, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it's a Beal, which is basically the best situation because it kills the targeted marketing. So now I'm thinking, what do I want to do on this turn? So I can networking, but the thing is that I think that asset that my opponent put down is a political because they didn't put it in the same server as the ice. So that's a kind of weird thing to do.
Yes.
But I'm not...
And the Moombad Virtual Tour is sort of a Moomba Temple / political protection.
Yeah. Protection for your assets, yeah. But yeah, the fact that now this targeted marketing is gone, and I want to have the chance, so I do choose to run access the non-virtual tour. It would have been awkward if it was an agenda, actually, because then I would have had to trash the virtual tour, take another tag, but I decided that was, given how strange it is to intentionally play an ice in a new server when you have a defensive upgrade and something in a new server, like playing something, I thought that the chance was fairly high that it was a political. Yeah.
And we can't quite see Chris's score area here, but I think it's just got the QPM and then the bankers and the...
it's just the QPM and the rest have been
City Hall.
setted.
Yeah. Okay, so this time we've got the virtual tour and ice.
Yes.
And a new card.
Yeah, so now I'm not so worried, because my opponent's low in credits, and...
Does he have 2 or 3?
2, I think.
2? Okay, so probably not enough to score an Astro from the board.
Although it might be 3. Like, the thing is that the fact that he only has one Astro and 59 cards makes 54 cards rather
Yep.
makes me not super worried about that. I just assume that it's a Jackson or something.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm running R&D in order to potentially score points while my opponent is too low to mid seasons.
Yeah.
Since I think that's I think I realized that was the best way. I thought that was the best way to turn off my opponent's mid seasons, was to run only when they're too low to take advantage of it.
And at this point, with only a Beal in your score area, exchange is not doing a whole lot. Although it's obviously something that your opponent can choose to spend a click on. I mean,
Yeah,
gaining a
it's-
point and denying your opponent one is fine.
It's perfectly fine, but it's not the best situation. So yeah, now I choose to gain a credit. So this turn next turn I'm planning to clear all 4 tags from
Yep.
networking, which is a bit awkward because I'll have no programs in play, no credits. But given we're basically sitting there doing, like, assuming that that's Jackson or not something that my opponent can utilize, like not a pad or something, which
Yep.
it obviously isn't because my opponent didn't res.
Yeah.
Or I assume it isn't. The fact that we're both sitting there with no resources is not a huge deal.
No. And Quandary is a piece of ice that you can deal with relatively easily.
Yes,
with
so
this
that's not a huge disadvantage that my opponent has a res quandary. So that's kind of my thought process at the moment, just because I really want to start developing my board, and there's a limit to the amount I can do that while still being tagged, because I can't play any resources.
And you also really can't play short gamble.
Yeah. Like, it's less effective.
And hold on to the credits. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your hand, it looks like there's a dirty laundry, a cutlery, networking.
A Faust. Yeah, there's definitely a Faust. I don't make it very easy to see what's in my hand.
No, that's all right.
true.
At least the cards are moving.
Yeah, so I've
All
decided,
four tags gone.
yeah, push
Yep.
the tags. Although I guess those tags, you're right about the bag encroachment. It is getting, like, I'm not saying it's unclear because I always keep my credits on my identity.
Yeah.
Like, but it does.
The bag is definitely encroached.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 games. I think it started off camera.
Yeah. But yeah, so my opponents. So like I'm not so worried about what my opponent's doing just because they're so low on resources. So now I'm thinking. So now I give them the opportunity to use. That I waited to see if they wanted to use room mill. To use the Jackson to get around room mill.
Yep.
I'm fairly sure I didn't have room mill in hand so I felt very smart about this. Even though
Okay.
it's probably right for you. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong, obviously, for your opponent. Like.
Yeah.
But when they do have mid-season, I am a bit... Like, it depends how many agendas they discarded, obviously. Like,
Yeah. I'm not sure that mid-seasons is very good.
no, but I mean... Oh, against network.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just mean, if they only discarded one agenda, it's probably fine to, like, have the small chance that they'll room mill run archives when you can mid-season them.
Okay.
But it depends, like, it really does depend what you think that mid-season's going to be doing for you.
True.
And if the answer is not very much, then...
So right now,
yeah.
Chris has, I think, 2 or 3 credits left after resing a wraparound. You've run the remote.
Yeah, I ran
and
the
then
remote.
you've just gained 3.
Yeah, so I ran again 2, I think. I had started off with 0, gained 1, gained 3, and gained 1 first. But
Oh, okay, then ran the remote.
so my opponent scored the Beal that was in the server. So that had been sitting there for a while. That's what I said before that's what I thought before was a Jackson.
Right.
But I guess a Beal makes sense too.
And now it's gone to 0, which is pretty good for you, because if you have a medium, you can... Oh, there might be a resistor. I think you saw a resistor earlier.
Yes. Well, there wasn't a resistor. I saw a card, but like.
Oh, that's right. It was the flipped was the resistor.
Yes. Yeah. It turns out to be not very correct because my opponent had like 4 agendas in hand or something. But I think that's where.
So that quandary is putting in work.
Yeah, but I do think that's where the agendas are, and I think if I can score a couple points now while it's still early, or I guess early in terms of board position, not early in terms of time, just because it's being a huge grind to control the other person's resources. But if I can score some points now, especially while I'm not tagged, so I'm not worried about QPM, and I have reasonably high amount of money, so I'm not super worried about hard hitting news. I think that's going to be the most likely way that I'm going to win this game. Yeah, so my opponent's just making it clear that they have 3 points, and then
putting them back. Okay.
That's cool.
That's all right. At least we saw the 3 points.
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
3 points to 2 points, and about even on the board. So yeah, I've decided to take a turn off for a bit to install Wildslide, just because I do need to get some programs out. I think I have a knifed in hand actually, although I can't remember entirely. So I think that at some point I want to knife that wraparound just so my opponent has one fewer safe server.
So at the moment, just to be clear, you've got no tags.
I have no tags.
Yeah, so those tags in front of Chris,
Those
he
are-
just forgot to get rid
No,
of.
those are his
Oh, these are click
counters.
counters.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
He's been using the die and the actual
old school tag
old school
counter.
tags.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, that's actually cool. That's been okay. So
Makes sense. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so-
no tags.
Yeah.
Which makes the wild side okay out there on its own. Although I generally don't like having wild side just sitting there.
Why not?
Just because then if they hard hitting use you can't get rid of all the tags.
Right, but I think at this point I've decided, like, because I played the wild side, I decided I'm gonna take a couple turns to set up, like, and I'm not super worried just because of my opponent's so low on resources. I don't really foresee many things since I've already dealt with so many of their politicals. I don't really foresee so many things I need to go in and trash.
Yeah. So a few of the politicals removed from the game, or only just the one bankers, wasn't it?
I think one bankers, two sensies, and a bankers in the bin, or something like that.
Okay.
But like
not a lot of them left in the deck, at
Yes.
least. Yeah.
like enough that I'm not super worried about that. I'd rather just get programs, like put the wild side into play so I can get programs out a bit more efficiently. So my opponent's put something in that remote, which I'm a little scared about. I might. I can't. What do you remember? What the targeted marketing names? I assume networking again.
I assume that it was another networking, yeah.
But I'm not so sure about that. I'm not certain about that.
It could have been Faust at this point.
Possibly
Or
Faust
David.
or David.
Yeah.
But I seem to recall it was the networking.
Yeah, I don't think that it's high value enough to just gain a 10 once
Yeah.
from Faust or David as
Yeah.
opposed to pretty much just shutting down networking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, my opponent has a pad res, which I was very happy that was a pad instead of something, just because, not that having pad in play is bad, but I was happy that it wasn't something that I had to deal with immediately, in that server, so I could spend some more of my resources, it must have been networking. I could spend some more of my resources, setting up programs. So I've decided that I'm really scared about that, so I'm going to knife the wraparound.
Okay.
My opponent, I think, forgets the controlling the message trigger because it triggers when the
Knifed is trashed.
when the wraparound
Yeah,
is trashed.
sorry, yeah. When the knife trashes the wraparound.
Yeah.
And then goes to trigger it from the virtual tour.
I think that's at this point in the turn. Yeah. Although I can't remember exactly. What's happening?
So if that happens, then the court player is unable to trigger controlling the message because they've forgotten. to
Yeah,
trigger
they
it
forgot the first
a card
time,
was
and
trashed.
then the virtual tour is no longer the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously it would have been much worse if my opponent, like, I don't think it actually would have turned out that relevant because of the
You've got
targeted
rid of the marketing
yeah,
now.
it's gone.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, like it would have been a bit of a pain.
Saved you click and a credit.
Yeah.
So I think Chris has maybe 2 or 3 credits there now, presumably 3.
Yeah, I
he's
think
just,
3.
Yeah. So probably gone up to 3 off the pad,
Yes.
which would have been enough to score the
So-
Astro.
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
can gain 2 and then mid-season
Yep.
if he wants, but he has to decide. Since I have 5 credits, I basically have the choice whether to push the to pay 5 and then
Take one tag.
gain 1, take 1 tag and then gain 1 and networking it,
Yeah.
or just ignore. So I think he's not going to do that just because it seems like that would put him down to 0 money.
And he has no clicks after he mid-seasons you because he has to gain 2 first.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
In which case I have 2 choices basically. I can just ignore the tags and trash the pads, do whatever I want, like accept I'm gonna be tagged but try and win before then, or I could take my next turn off to clear the tags, which means we basically trade a turn for a turn. Or except he has to trade 2 turns basically because I lose some of my credits too. So like basically he's just prolonging the game and he has to work out whether it's good for him to do that or not.
And at this point, this is a recurring theme in our games so far with decks that have exchange of information in them, which is that if the runner manages to score the non-GFI agendas early, it's really good for them.
Yep. So maybe he had one more. Maybe he had a stack of 4 credits.
Okay, so maybe he had 4. So
Yeah, so
you're
that's
going to
much-
have to take 2,
Yeah, that's
which is still not bad for you.
No, but it means I'm stuck with them for a turn.
No.
Yes. Oh, I can lose the networking, but I don't want to do that.
Well, no, you can gain 2 and then networking.
I have wild side.
Oh, you have wild side.
So I
see.
can
Sure,
gain
sorry,
1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wait, 3. Oh, maybe it was 3. Maybe he
Maybe
had.
it was 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a stack of 5.
Okay. Who even knows?
But it was some stack. So yeah, now I'm left with 3 tags. So that means I'm definitely going to be tagged for a turn.
However, he's still low on credits.
Yes.
Which means that even getting rid of the wild side could be a challenge.
Yeah, it would take him like his pad money. He would get 1 for his turn, 1 action on his next turn.
Yeah.
And losing the wild side, I think, wouldn't be that bad for me, since like I have Faust, so I do need cards, but it's not like I couldn't use the extra. Like money is also useful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I managed to. Yeah, so I just chose to stick all 3 tags, just because the same reason I'd rather clear them all on 1 turn versus 1 at a time. So
I think that logic is particularly strong when you have networking. When you don't have networking, obviously clearing some tags is better because if you get close,
definitely.
you lose your ability to clear any.
Yeah, I specifically meant in this situation. Yeah, in general, I think it's better to clear them 2 at a time if you can. Or like something, just because of closed accounts, but... So yeah, I think I'm drawing 1 to get more fuel for Faust, and 2 to potentially find Parasite to kill the HQ Ice or Medium.
Okay.
So
yeah. How do you feel about the position in this game right now?
I think I'm a little behind, just because I've been forced to be tagged a bit earlier than I would have liked. But things are going okay. My opponent seems to be very flooded. If you look at his hand right now, he has 2 ice, 3 agendas.
Yeah.
So it's not like he hasn't really been able to capitalize on that so much. So he's just, what's he doing?
He's purged. So does that give you some information about what's in his hand? Or does it just make you sort of wonder why he values the data sucker counters so highly?
Yeah, because I generally think sucker counters are not that important here. Like in this type of matchup, just because they don't have that many ice that's in between Faust and David. They have nothing like Architect where, the
data sucker counter is quite valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting call because I would rarely purge just for data sucker counters. Yeah.
Like only if I was worried about Parasite killing my toll booth or something.
Yeah.
And even then, it would depend. But yeah, I think maybe he just wants to build up some defenses on his centrals so he doesn't just get run over in the late game because he's expecting the game to take quite a while.
I think it made sense for Chris to do it in that situation because of what was in his hand.
Right, because he was so flooded he didn't want to introduce more cards, potentially introduce more cards to the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe gaining 3 credits would have been better. I don't know, but...
Yeah, so I am using the 1 at a time thing, just so I have at least 1. Because I have 4 tags now, I want at least 1 click left to threaten to run a remote. Right,
so you don't want to have to spend all 4 clicks
clearing tags.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ideal situation is 2, because then it gives you a chance, if you have the money, it gives you a chance to run, take a tag if necessary from CTM, and then clear the tag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you can still end the turn without any tags.
And this is actually quite similar in terms of the problem you've avoided there, is quite similar to the problem that Mike ran into when he kept the QPM on his film critic.
Yes.
Because he denied himself that opportunity as the runner for a few turns, which Matt exploited.
Yeah. So I've decided to clear the networking tags just because of QPM. If we're going to talk about QPM again.
Yeah.
And then I'm running that server just because I really want my opponent to have to kind of spend their resources trading water. Like, they created a new server, but now they just have to gain the credits again for the wraparound, and eventually I'll find some way to kill the wraparound or a David, which will sort of invalidate it.
I think that was a knife that just went into your hand, possibly.
Very possibly.
No, it was a spoon. Oh, and that's really big given what's in Chris's hand at this point.
And he is going to tag me, but I'm okay to stick the tag for a turn, since EOI is the only issue, and I really want to get an access this turn, as soon as possible.
Yeah. And he is now very low on credits, and he's gone for the data raven. I think that's the right play. He wasn't going to be able to res the toll booth, I don't think. I can't quite tell how many credits he has, but...
6, I think.
Okay.
I assume that's a stack. Each of the stacks are 5s.
Okay.
Yeah, so now I think I have to work out whether just what to do with my resources. So like yeah.
And Data Raven on HQ is a really hard one as a runner, because you've run HQ a few times now and you've bricked.
Yeah.
And you sort of think, well, if there's one agenda in there, is it really worth me?
Yeah, to do that I would have to decide to go tag me.
Yeah.
And the benefit to that would be there's a turnpike as well.
Yeah.
But I'm just choosing to bounce. Run archives, that's a turnpike, I think.
Yeah, it is. And so you didn't have credits to lose, so you
Yep.
used a sucker counter and a chrono
Yeah,
tap to
then I'm
break.
going to gain a credit and networking back.
Yeah.
So like we've successfully done the dance for a couple of turns where I just we both have no credits. We're both kind of building up our board a little bit, but not that much. Like it's going very, very slowly.
Yeah.
And I think I'm actually in a good position now because all my opponents iced on their relevant servers tag.
Yeah.
So I'm able to ignore them if I want and Faust the things that I don't, like the Faust the things that need to be broken.
Yeah.
But my opponent's very flooded. That doesn't help.
So he has 4 agendas in hand now. And I didn't quite see what he got rid of, but I assume it was the closed accounts. Oh, it was a toll booth. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable given that he has 3 credits. If you might notice that his credits have migrated.
Yes, they're on the front of the mat now.
Yeah, so I got to Dirty Laundry R&D, which is pretty sweet given that I got to go to 0 credits and then still gain 5 credits from the laundry and not have to suffer the turnpike.
And now, are you going back into HQ? No.
No, I think that was it. I think I just maybe drew gain 2 and then... Because I would have drawn the Dirty Laundry,
Oh,
I
of
think.
course. Yep.
Otherwise, I think I would have played the last turn on HQ. Or maybe... I can't remember.
Okay. So draw gain to laundry. And then the 15 minutes is going straight back in?
Yep. Perfectly reasonable since my opponent really doesn't want to give me a turn on 5 points.
No. And there's an install. Was that a city hall?
Yeah, it's a city hall. But I think he might be running out of good things to get with it.
Possibly. Although I feel like city hall is probably the best asset for him to draw.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, just the fact that he didn't use it this turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he wants to wait to potentially hard hitting use me. Like, to be able to do the consoling visit. Like, the thing is that this, I think, is not so great for my opponent because his split his ice on his split his ice very thin. Like, he has 1 ice on HQ, only 2 on R&D, and 1 on archives and a 2nd remote, which I don't usually recommend. Which means that it's going to be much easier for me to get into any relevant server than I think my opponent would like.
So you've left the pad. So now, as the corp, what's the out?
To get me tagged and then have me steal a GFI and exchange me. I think that's one of the things.
Right, and that puts him to 5.
Yep.
And then he needs to do it again.
You can it's definitely possible to score through that Raven server. If you notice, I think that thing has been there for ages, so it's not like I'm.
The city hall's only been there like 2 turns.
Oh, sure, but yeah. I mean, it's been there long enough for him to have scored.
To have scored it, yep.
If it was a 3 for 2. Sensi, yep. So I'm going in. So I'm still doing the control the assets thing, just because now I have quite a significant money lead, so I'm only worried about, say, breaking news closed accounts or something like that.
And not only does Sensi get Chris closer to tag punishment, as far as you're concerned, it also lets him bury agendas from his hand.
But both of which are really bad for me.
At some point now, you have been running HQ reasonably frequently.
Yeah.
But at some point now, you're probably going to decide that there has to be more agendas in there.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be willing, to say that the density is high enough that I'm going to go through Raven for it. I'm going to, I would have to maybe after I score another agenda from R&D, I might do it 4 times, on a turn. But I wouldn't just do it, randomly, I think. You know, I wouldn't just go... If I was going to do it through a Raven, I would have to decide that would be my game plan.
Yeah. Data Raven on HQ is an interesting one. It's not somewhere I usually put my Ravens, but then I think in this particular deck, well, not this particular deck, but this particular identity, you're generally able to get the other cards out of your hand well enough that having agendas stick around in your hand is okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm deciding what I want to do. I think I might same old thing knifed. I can't remember exactly. We'll see. Oh, employee strike.
makes some sense given that there is another 2 remotes that have just been installed there.
Yeah.
And we've got rid of the Museum of History.
Yep. Just because I don't want my opponent to be able to shuffle in like Sensi or Hard Hitting News especially. Or not Hard Hitting News right now, but the Consulting Visit or something.
Yeah.
But his...
Pretty much any targets from Wombat City Hall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. But yeah, I think at this point he has 5 agendas, so I wouldn't say that's the best situation as a co-op.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he just drew a QPM.
And so Chris has kept the closed accounts by the looks and the Consulting Visit he's just drawn, which means that I think a QPM's gone into the bin,
Yeah,
which is very
QPM's
reasonable.
QPM's gone into the bin behind Turnpike, yeah.
Turnpike, although Turnpike's probably not very likely to tag given you have Data Sucker and Faust.
Yes, it's in fact fairly unlikely. But you know, like...
Although it is worth mentioning that when I had a Faust in play against Chris in the game immediately before this, that unfortunately we didn't catch on camera, I did take a tag from a Turnpike when I had a Faust in play because I forgot that I could Faust it. So it does happen.
Yeah.
That's the sort of, high-level play that you expect from us.
Yeah, so what's he thinking about now? How to get those agendas into his score area?
And I think that's pretty hard.
Yeah, given that the thing is that I think if the Raven and the Wraparound had been in the same server, it would actually be a perfectly reasonable scoring remote. Like, it would be a little dicey.
I think 3 turns ago it would have been really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean necessarily now, I just mean in general. Like,
I should have counted up those credits while they were laid out. I think there was about 6 or 7 of them.
I was going to say 8.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it looks like the pile on the right is 3. Or something, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I install the turntable. Why do I install the turntable? Oh, because I think it could be a 1-pointer, which I want to swap for my opponent's Beal.
Okay. Instead it's GFI, which you won't be swapping
No,
for a Beal
definitely
or a QPM.
Won't be swapping for anything. But yeah, the fact that yeah.
And that was a Beal out there. So Chris has just decided that he has to put agendas down.
Yeah, like
In
it's
play?
not unreasonable, but the fact that is, I think there was only 1 turn in the whole game where I let a naked asset go. At least a naked unprotected asset. So, I'm it's a tough sell. Like,
Yeah. And it was unlikely to pay off, but Chris was probably feeling the pressure. I think he masked it reasonably well, that he was flooded for quite a long time there without the release valve of Jackson coming through for
yeah,
him.
well, he did see Jackson's, but early, like
Yeah.
much earlier than necessary.
Yeah. And it is always hard in a deck that's got so many 5-3s. If you, as the runner, are able to control the corpse resources to the point where they can't develop a scoring server, it's going to be very hard for them to win. So, yeah, great game there, very close, and shows you the power of CTM, because the runner was on the back foot for a lot of that game, but then came back and was able to control the corpse message well enough to keep them off the EOI swap late in the game. So, well played to both players. We'll be back soon. I've been Jesse Marshall with Wilfy Hurrig for the winning agenda.
Thanks for listening.